Hello and welcome back. This is episode 3 of building out a tournament site that is World Cup-esque. I'm Bald Guy with a Beard, as you're aware, and today on episode 3 we're going to be doing something a little more focused than the first two episodes. The first two episodes were more about getting some component structure done, getting data from the back end, sort of basic stuff. What we're doing today, isn't too complicated as far as what the outcome will be on the UI. But what it points out, though, and what I want to point out is that, excuse me, there's a lot of architectural decisions that go into even simple UI changes like this. So today we're going to be focusing on, if you'll look at here as the example, there's this is a group standings from the World Cup, and last time in the last episode we had this, we had all the teams and we had the columns, but we didn't have the data in here calculated and figured out because it requires some level of mathematical computation and whatever, so we need like sort of a calc engine to figure these out. So that's going to be the focus today, is getting these filled out and completed successfully and correctly. You can see that there's decision points that go into what we're going to do here today. So for example, the question would be, do we calculate this and store this? And I wanted to start doing this format a little more, where we, like, before we get into coding, we discuss kind of what the big key architectural decisions were and why I'm doing it a certain way. And you can argue with me or debate me down below if you want to, as to choices I've made. There's, I believe in the idea that there are correct decision scopes. In other words, there's a good decision scope and then there's a wrong decision scope. So there are right and wrong ways to do things, but at a certain point, there are give and take on certain things within those bubbles that allow you to make the decision that you want to make. But anyway, word vomit here. So first decision that I made was, so should this data be stored? This calculated data, that, and remember, this comes from matches. The raw data comes from the matches, and then we determine from those matches what this data is. We determine the number of wins, losses, goals for, etc. No, I don't think we should store it. When you store something like that, the raw data can get out of sync with the calculated data, and we don't need to do that at this point. The only systems I've come across that really actually need that would be something like a banking system that has to run closes or something every night. Something, this is just an example, but runs closes every night. They get some level of intermediary numbers, and then they process reporting off of those. So there might be 50 reports that they run during the day, or some personnel in their company wants to run reports against them, and they're able to tweak some of the inputs to change the data and that sort of thing. That would be a good spot to save that kind of data. This is not necessary because, first of all, we're only dealing with, in this case, 48 teams, and that's not enough. And even with a number, we're not dealing with billions of records. So obviously that decision is the easiest one to make, is that, no, we're not going to store it. We're going to calculate them on the fly. Should it be calculated in the API or UI? Now, there's a little more debate here. There's some people that would say, let's calculate this in the API. I don't 100% hate that, but my decision was to move this calc engine to the UI. And the reason why this is it is eventually in some format. I might tweak it later, but like, it's going to get reused probably. So if you can imagine, someone comes in here and we have a customer, and they're building out a tournament, and they're playing with the rules that are going to create the results here. In other words, I've seen some soccer tournaments that they give you 5 points for a win, or most are 3 points for a win. Some have goal differential limitations and that sort of thing, right? So you're going to want to be able to see, the user's probably going to want to be able to see what their rule change is, how it affects a grouping. And so you'd probably want to show a sample of that on the side. And I don't want to hit an API every single time I want to recalculate those rules, right? So let's imagine in the future we have a drag and drop and there's a bunch of rules, and we set a priority, which we will be doing in a few episodes. You set a priority. Um, that's going to directly affect and change the tables, the groupings that we have. So I don't want to go to the API for that. I'd rather have it on the UI side. Uh, I think that's cleaner. You can debate me below if you disagree. And then the last question is, and this is kind of one of those key concept questions in React, should we memoize this? Um, I don't take the decision of memoizing lightly because I think it adds complication and it causes any future person who's interacting with this component, whether it's on a direct level or whether it's as a child or a parent or whatever, it adds complication and rethinking to that in any change you make. But in this case, I think it's a good candidate for that because we have data that is being recalculated potentially on every render, every outside, and we're going to have different interactions on those components and its parent components that could result in it being re-rendered commonly, not directly related to the data we have. So just as a summary of that, like just you always want to have the same. If you're going to have the same data, this data is not going to change very often. We don't want to have to recompute it every single time someone makes a small change on the page and causes a re-render. Is basically what I was saying there. Sorry, I got too verbal there, but anyway, so those are my decision points. So now I want to go ahead and get into the coding aspect of it, which is we're going to start with building a little calc util. Okay, so in here, we already have utils here. Uh, I space. I start to, well, I organize as I go, sort of. So there might be eventually a time where we split this off. Like we're going to have a million utils in here probably at some point, and we'll split them off then. But I'm going to go ahead and create a calc standings uh, util. Yeah, I guess I'll call it util. Again, I always have problems naming things, man. It takes me. It'll sometimes I'll sit there for. I'll leave my desk and go take a walk and try to think of a way to name something because it bothers me when it's not named right, and I don't think this is really named great, so it's bothering me. But yeah. Okay, so we're going to create a function called calc all standings in a second. So I'll have export function calc all standings, and we do know at least one thing, and that is going to be the input of this is obviously going to be the team IDs, right? So, and that's a number array, and we're going to have matches. So we're going to call this matches and match array. I realize I'm dating myself here. How many of you thought don't play with matches as soon as I said that? That's an old thing that parents used to tell their kids when they were, well, when an old man like myself was young. But okay, so what I like to do kind of sometimes is when I receive this input is kind of pseudo code it out. So in other words, I'm going to need an object list of some sort that has team IDs and the ability to store, right, P for played games, W's for wins, L for losses, draws, right? So I need an object that has that. So that's what I plan on doing, building out first. I'm gonna have all of the team IDs, and then these all kind of set to 0, and then there's going to be a running calculation done to figure them out. Then we need to like loop the matches, right? And so we're going to get them. I don't know what order we're getting them in, and I'm not going to filter them or sort them rather in any way to do that. I'm just going to loop them. So we're going to have running calculations for each of these teams. So we're going to loop the matches. Then we're going to get and determine whether the match team is home or away, right? Because we don't know. They're going to be stored. They're stored, if you recall, they're stored. The home ID and away ID is stored in the data. So we need to be able to determine that, and then depending upon which one it is, we're going to call a method to add that match to like the team's calculation, right? So we're going to have like a sort of let's see, export a function. We're going to have a method here that, or a function, keep saying method, a function here that says apply the match result, right? So that will be called from here in this loop. So I think that kind of gets it in my head. I think we can go from here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a constant, and this is going to be called, again with the naming, standings, and because this is going to be the ultimate return, so I think it's fair to call it that. And we're going to create a new map, and bear with me here. So we're going to have a number, and it's going to also have a team standing. So this will be kind of its own. We're going to go ahead and get rid of this by, it's not what it's called. Team standing. I thought that was what it was called. Anyway, I'll get back to that in a second. And then we have a constructor for that. And in that constructor, we're going to say team IDs dot map. We're going to call it team, and we're going to say, gosh, bear with me here. Let me think. So we're going to have a team ID. Whoops, team ID. And I'm going to make this look a little bit more like an ID. So because we're going to want to set that team ID to this in the first part, and then the second part is going to be P equals 0. We're going to want to like set all these. W, why is it not recognizing? What am I doing wrong here? Team standing. Oh, I don't have a team standing interface yet. Duh. Okay. I forgot I don't have that. So we're going to have an interface. Sorry about that. Team standing. And then this guy is going to have P. These are all going to be like numbers. So we're going to want to just like boom, boom, boom. I don't forgot how many we have. Like, I don't know. We have wins, losses. I might miss one of these at some point. Goals. Well, these should be lowercase, right? D L W P. Goals for, goals against. If I get all these, I'll be really impressed. Goal diff. And then, well, obviously we're going to need points. So I think that's kind of close to what we want right here, right? So then back to this again. What is it? Source has only 2 elements. Okay. Oh, I think I see what I did. Dumb. That, I think, is part of it. And then it says is missing the following. Okay, perfect. So now we just need to initialize L0 and draw as 0 and goals for 0, goals against 0, and points 0. Will that clear that? Am I missing anything else? Require GD. Oh, not that GD. All right, so there we go. I love it when you see the red squiggly go away. So essentially we accomplished this aspect of it. We're gonna keep going on this. So we're gonna loop through the matches, right? So we're gonna loop through them. So we're gonna say for I'm having a brain fart here. Match of matches So there we go. So now this is actually inside there. So, and then the first thing we want to do is we're going to want to determine, we're going to want to get the home and away team. So we're going to get that by going to the standings that we just created. And this is sort of the benefit of creating a map out of this. Now I can go and say m dot match dot home team ID, right? And then I'm going to do the same for away, right? Away equals standings dot get match dot away team ID, right? Now these can be null, right? So what we're going to do then is we're going to say if home. So in other words, if that exists, let's make a call to my apply result match, and that will be, and we'll do the same for away, right? If away exists, let's call this, and obviously we'll apply what we input to them slightly differently, depending upon what we put in here. So let's get rid of these call method to add mat. Yeah, so there we go. So we don't need those comments anymore. And now we're going to call this. Now we need to determine what we need to pass in here. So we're going to need to pass, let's see. We're going to need to pass the team standing. I guess I should call it the team standing, right? So I'll just call it standing. Standing, team standing is the type, right? Stand, not stander, standing. And then we're going to need the sort of the results of the match. We could do this a couple of ways, but I'm just going to pass in here. Let's take this down a level here. So I'll see it, and then I'm going to pass in goals for and number and goals against number, right? Because this is what's going to determine all these numbers in here, all these things that we need to calculate, almost all of them anyway. So obviously in the first circumstance from this, we're going to, we've determined that there's a match here. So so standing dot played games, right? Plus plus. So yeah, we there has been a match. So games played is going to increase by 1. The wins, losses, and draws thing we'll leave for the end here. Goals for. So it'd be standing dot goals for equals what we just passed in, right? Goals for standing dot goals against equals goals against. And I got to keep up with this so I can remember. Goal differential, we're not going to be able to determine until we're completely done with all of this, because we need to make sure we have all the teams. So this is sort of on hold, and I'm going to put a note here to say, at the end, calc goal differential, right? So that won't be done till the end. And then we don't know what kind of points we're going to get until we know. We can't calculate that without knowing some other information. And that other information is this. If goals for is greater than goals against, then we know we won the match. So we'll put like, this is a win, right? And we're going to set, we know, wins standing dot w plus plus and standing dot points plus equals 3, right? And is that all we would calculate for a win? I think that's it. Then we would do the loss would be, or do we do draw first? Let's do draw, because I think there's a little more there maybe. Else if GF equals GA. So there's a draw, and standing dot draw plus plus, and then standing dot points is plus equals 1. Now, I want to be clear about something too here is that eventually in the future episodes, we're going to have a rules engine. And so a lot of these guys right here, like the points totals, may be a variable that comes into this. So I haven't really set myself up for success there, so there'll be a little bit more refactoring probably at that point. But just note that likely this isn't going to remain exactly static the way it is. So and then the else is a loss, right? So the else is a loss, and I think the only thing we changed there is the L. We add an L, right? Because there's no points given at all, right? And this is an object, so it will be changed. There's no necessary return. We've passed an object in and it's getting updated. So that's good. And then we obviously need to put in the need to pass the home in and the match dot goals for and the match dot goals against, right? Am I not doing something right here? Oh, I have it spelled out in there. So goal. Really? Match? I don't know why that wasn't. Maybe you guys will see something I didn't, but I don't know why that wasn't coming up. Anyway, match dot. Oh, this is why. Home score, away score, and then it would be away match dot away score, match dot home score. There we go. And then, so the reason why we're doing it this way is if the match is on the home team, right, and so we get the home standings record, we know that the first one is our goals for, right? So in this case, it would be a home game. We'd be the home team, and this would be that. If we were the away team, we would have gotten this, and our score would be the away score. And we want to apply that to here, goals for and goals against, because that tells us which one we are, and we can determine from that whether there's a win, loss, or a draw. So that works nicely. Now the last thing here, goal differential. And we want to, let's see, we have this guy up here. Okay. So we want to say something like, oh, I'm overthinking this. This is, we just walk through every one of those because we have a team for each one. So we're just going to walk through and calculate goal differential based off its own record. So this would be, so yeah, I think I'm overthinking this a little bit. Yeah, because we're just going to want to, we have a list of teams and we're just going to want to loop through and recalculate one value on them based on the values in the row. So this should be easy. So we're going to do a for loop for const standings in, nope, of in standings. Definitely want that of, because we don't want to iterate the keys. We want to iterate the actual objects. And then we're going to say s dot goal differential equals s dot goals 4 minus s dot goals allowed. Why are you not giving me what I want? Oh, standings dot values. Yes, we have to use, yes, okay. So now we're iterating back through these records again, and because we know they're completely done and we don't know what order they would come in, maybe we would order them and then do this in here so we can assure ourselves that we don't have to roll through them again like that. But I don't know. Maybe not. Then we can return standings, and that would be ultimately what we've got. So we're going to be returning this guy with it completely populated with information. Cool. So now we can move on to the UI part. To save that, we can move on to the UI part and update probably groups first. Let's see here. Groups. Oh, I just realized the time. So we're almost to 30 minutes at this point, and I think that there's about 15 more minutes of content here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this episode here, and in episode 4 we're going to do the UI portion of showing the the calculations for all the standings, and an example of memoization, and the reasons why we would do that there. So I'm going to cut this off here. I really want to get these down to where they're about 15 minutes each, like cut them off in reasonable chunks so they're not as long. So that should be the first step towards that. So hopefully that is it. And I'll see you in the next episode.